Good morning and welcome back to Community Church. We start our year with the lighting of a candle. I tell you that my name is Dean.
Dean, we can't hear you.
I'm honored to have a long history with this church, with what it represents.
Dean, we can't hear you at all.
We light this candle for 2026. We light this candle, for 2026, candle of hope, a candle of joy, a candle of welcome. I can't help but, in introducing this, we were going to play this clip, which is a prayer mosque in New York that was read at Mom. I was crying the whole way through, and it was so hopeful. And I urge you all to go look for that beautiful prayer from Imam. Hey, just a great way to start the new year. Then came these recent 24 hours, and we can talk about that. But let's stay focused on hope and joy and community here at Community Church. We're so glad a bunch of you are here in the audience, and as well as a bigger bunch on Zoom and YouTube. And we're really looking forward to this program, especially for the music that we're starting with. I want to introduce you to Hussam Balul. Hussam Balul on the oud from Syria. Lizzie Cook on the cello from North Carolina and Boston. And Ghassan Awahi, did I say it all right? All right? Awali from Palestine, Gaza, and Ramallah. Each one of these has a story to tell, and I first heard two of them at a standout for Palestine that happens all summer and into the fall in Roslindale at our farmers market. And I said, "You want to come to Community Church?" Guess what? They said yes, and they're here with us. Yay. Welcome these folks to play beautiful music for us this morning.
Are we going to hear the prayer first? Or?
No, we're not going to play it. We couldn't find it and set it up.
Hello, everybody. We're going to play the first a piece, a composition of mine, Sama'i Ajam. This is the very first time we ever play this, so it's a premiere. Thank you. That was Sama'i Basit, a composition of mine. I was accompanied by Lizzie Cook on cello and Ghassan Sawalhi on percussion. My name is Hussam Behloul. Shukran. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, all three of you. Maybe if just stayed in place. That'll be my incentive to really be brief here, which is not easy. Lots of things to talk about. First thing I'll tell you about is next week. I'll only limit it to one Sunday. We have a whole newsletter full of events coming up. But next week we have Professor Yemi Prince Ogunyemi. He's a longtime member of Community Church, and he hails from Kenya. And his topic is African philosophies, and this one is called Yoruba Idealism. We're looking forward to hearing from Yemi. Also, wonderful music. Helder Tsinine is from Mozambique. Again, a farmer's market connection. I heard him play with his band. I'm hoping he brings a couple of his band members. He has a great bass player and a great trombone player. It should be, again, just like today, really great music from different parts of the planet. So those are the two. Oh, I got to tell you about Larry Watson, fantastic gospel singer who will join us on MLK Day. It's a 3 p.m. concert, just so that a lot of churchgoers, he's a gospel singer, and he just is full of soul and energy and power. Larry Watson, that's January 18th. Okay, enough of those. Oh, too many things to talk about. I'll talk about Venezuela. And I was so inspired by about 800 people at Park Street Station yesterday afternoon. It was an immediate call to action, brought together by Mass Peace Action and Party for Socialism and Liberation and a couple of other organizing groups, and it was really a wonderful turnout in response to just a horrific event. I want to urge you to check out our great friend of this church, Max Blumenthal, and his reporting on this. He and his close partner, Anya Parampil, are just deeply versed in Venezuela, the history of U.S.'s interventions in Venezuela, not just over the time of the Bolivarian Revolution, but even before, deep into the early 20th century. And I want to recommend, if you want a book, this is the one. It's called Corporate Coup, Venezuela and the End of U.S. Empire by Anya Parampil. And it really just, I've been deep into this book right now. There's also a YouTube that Max and Anya on the Gray Zone put together just yesterday, sort of in response. They had been up all night just following the Venezuela news, and they've both been there numerous times and reported and interviewed all the main actors as journalists, and Anya wrote this amazing book. So check them out, Max Blumenthal and Anya Parampil. We're hoping to get them to, maybe the two of them, give a talk online. They have 2 small children. They're a couple, and that's, maybe we can pay a babysitter or something to to get them to be online with us for an analysis of whatever is going on when that comes down, which is just a unfolding situation. I want to also tell you that here's a new gift to Community Church. It's a book of poetry by Hassan Balul. And it says, "My gift to the Community Church of Boston, with love and respect, Hassan Balul." So thank you, Hassan. Poems. And Hassan hails from Syria, and I'm hoping that we can do a program about Syria in some close future date. Such a story of the Balkanization and Israelization of Syria that is sort of beyond comprehension, but we'd love to hear from not only Hassan, but maybe other speakers about Syria. So thank you. I always say finally, but here's what we love to do in the new year, which is go from the back of this book. This is Eduardo Galeano, Children of the Days. It has an entry for every day of the year, little vignettes of inspiration, and kind of reminds me of the what my parents called the Daily Light, which is evangelical sort of like inspirational prayer thing that we had around the dinner table after dinner every night. This is very different from that. This is January 4th. The Land That Attracts. Today in 1634, Isaac Newton was born. Newton never had any lovers as far as we know, male or female. Terrified of infections and ghosts, he died a virgin, touched by no one. But this fearful man had the courage to investigate and reveal the movement of the heavenly bodies, the composition of light, the speed of sound, the conduction of heat, and the law of gravity, the Earth's irresistible forces of attraction, which calls to us and by calling reminds us of our origin and our destiny. January 4th, Isaac Newton. Eduardo Galeano. Let's bring back our trio for another piece.
Yes.
Hussam, Lizzie, and Hassan.
So this one, I will sing it. It's a poem by Mahmoud Darwish and was composed by Marcel Khalife. It's called Amru Bismiki, and I will read you a rough translation of the lyrics. It's a short song. It says, I pass by your name when I'm alone with myself. I pass by your name when I'm alone with myself, as a Damascene might pass through Andalusia. Here, lemons lit the salt of my blood, and here a wind fell of the horse. I pass by your name, no army besieges me, no country, as if I were the last of the guards, or a poet strolling through his obsessions.
باسمك إذا أخلو إلى نفسي كما يمر دمشقي بأندلسي. أمر باسمك إذا أخلو إلى نفسي كما يمر دمشقي بأندلسي. هناك ضالك الليمون ملح دم وهنا قد ريح عن الفرس. هنا ضالك الليمون ملح دم وهنا قد ريح عن الفرس. يحاصرني ولا بلاد كأني آخر الحال. لا جيش يحاصرني أو شاعر يتمشى في عاجزه أمر اسمك لا جيش يحاصرني ولا بلاد كأني آخر الحرس أمر باسمك لا جيش يحاصرني أو شاعر يتمشى في هاجسه
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hussam, Lizzie, and Ghassan. Two real quick announcements. We had a very successful craft sale during this holiday season, and we still have a lot of it out on tables for you to peruse and purchase, maybe even a post-New Year's discount. They're all over the auditorium. We also have products from Palestine, from Olive Branch Fair Trade, an all-Palestine gift shop on Martha's Vineyard. That's back in the back. Also, we go upstairs one floor, and we have removed the Sacco and Vanzetti archive that lived with us for 4 years and was carefully and meticulously curated by our member and volunteer, Jerry Kaplan. Did an amazing job, and it got boxed up and went to the Boston Public Library across the street. And it was a wonderful thing that we were able to do that. And now we have a space that's basically vacant, and we have taken all of Bob Datilio's books. That's who we inherited that Sacco and Vanzetti archive from. He was a scholar of the Sacco and Vanzetti case, which we have in our DNA all the way back to our founding in 1920. And now that that's gone, all the rest of the mountain of books from Bob Datilio's very cryptic, intellectual, scholarly collection are up there on display. They will soon be offered to a couple of different book dealers to remove in masse. We'll box them up and sell them. But in the meantime, they're up there. If any of you have a bookish blood in you like I do, I'd be glad to have you take a look at our books up on the third floor. There's tables and tables of them. So now I get to introduce Ilan Pappe. First, Ilan, thank you for writing the book, The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine, which is such an important document in our struggle and in the search for truth. I have transcribed word for word an introduction from Ali Abu Nima of Electronic Intifada, and I will read it as the introduction to Ilan this morning. Ilan Pappe, Professor of History at the University of Exeter in the UK, Director of the European Center for Palestine Studies. He gained renown as one of the new historians who shattered long-standing Zionist lies about the founding of Israel and corroborated the Palestinian accounts of the Nakba using Israeli archival sources. He's the author of many, many books, more than I can keep up with. A History of Modern Palestine, One Land, Two People, The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine, and I've got a very short history of the Israel-Palestine conflict, The Biggest Prison on Earth, A History of Gaza and the Occupied Territories, Lobbying for Zionism on Both Sides of the Atlantic. That's just a little sample. Ilan is here with us at CCB for the first time, though if you follow Palestine, you have heard his voice on multiple platforms, speaking with eloquent clarity, backed by rigorous academic discipline, addressing the history of Palestine, and now very honestly addressing the future of Israel, and asking, what is this thing going to look like in 2048? when I'm, 94 years old? And what is our role as activists in influencing that outcome towards a positive and just reality for both Palestinians and for Jews throughout the world? He is a distinguished scholar and has been a longtime advocate and voice for the liberation of Palestine. Welcome, Ilan, to Community Church of Boston.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Good afternoon to you. I was asked to answer a very important question. Why is it important?
Ilan?
Yeah? Can you hear me? You can't hear me?
Do we have... Hold on. Let's
Okay.
figure this out.
That's okay.
It's coming over fine on YouTube.
Can you hear him on the laptop?
Oh, okay. They say that they hear me on YouTube, but not in the...
Hold on, Ilan. We're still
Yeah,
trying to
okay.
get sound here.
That's
We
okay.
apologize.
No worries. No worries. I'll wait.
Okay. If you'll give us a little
Yeah,
sound.
can I try again? Can you hear me in the church as well?
No. Oh.
No.
Hold on. Shall we try it through the... You need to also run it. We'll be right with you, Ilan.
Okay.
Right. Try now for us, Ilan.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Excellent.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Okay, no worries, no worries. So let me start again. Thank you for having me. Good afternoon, and good evening for those who might, like me, might be in other time zones. I was asked to answer a very important question, which is why do we need to talk about the history of Palestine and Gaza in order to understand the reality today and have some understanding of what awaits us in the near and more distant future. History here is important because in many ways we are still in the same historical chapter that started with the arrival of the Zionist movement in Palestine in the late 19th century. It's not surprising that Palestinian historians and activists and thinkers call the whole period from 1882 until today the ongoing catastrophe or the ongoing Nakba, or as the historian Rashid Khalidi preferred to call it, the ongoing war on Palestine. So we are in a chapter that actually has history, but we are still part of that history. And understanding that history is something that when it is presented to people with a modicum of decency in them, immediately puts them on the side of the victims, of the colonized, of the victims of ethnic cleansing, of the oppressed. And I think that this is one of the reasons that, especially after the 7th of October 2023, but even before that, official Israel, official spokesperson for Israel, were very adamant that historical context should not be mentioned when you discuss Israel and Palestine. This was a particular important position for them after the 7th of October 2023. You might all remember that the Secretary General of the United Nations, Guterres, although he condemned the acts of the Hamas on the 7th of October, immediately said that we should understand that these acts were not done in a vacuum, which he meant they were done within a historical context. Israel's response was to demand that he would be fired. He would be removed from his position as Secretary General. And this was followed by a very assertive kind of campaign by Israel and its allies, especially in Europe, but also in parts of the United States, to demand that in academic centers, people would not discuss the events of the 7th of October within a historical context. The worst case was Germany, where academics were told by their university management in a very straightforward way, do not mention context. If you mention context when you discuss the events of the 7th of October, you might be accused of anti-Semitism or of supporting terrorism. And I think that the Israelis are, in that respect, are right, as I said before, because the context do not only enable us to have a sophisticated position on the question of Palestine, it also allows us to understand the connection between a one-off event like the 7th of October and our moral and historical judgment of the whole process that brought with it both the events of the 7th of October, but also the Israeli genocidal reaction to them. So in a way, when we are discussing the historical context, in some places, especially in the global north or in the west, can be described as subversive, as I said, almost tantamount to supporting terrorism or bordering on anti-Semitism. I'm sure this is not a position any one of you in the church or those of us who are listening to us on YouTube share, but I want to explain how the historical context became a kind of a contentious subject between those who try to defend the Israeli actions on the ground after the 7th of October and those of us who want to put the 7th of October and particularly the genocide that followed it within a historical context that allows us to understand how we got into this horrible moment in the history of modern Palestine, and what does it tell us, at least tentatively, about the future. Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, was mainly referring to the 17 years of siege. The Israeli imposed siege and blockade on Gaza, and he wanted to say, you know, although I don't justify what happened, but that's a reaction for people living in the conditions of a maximum security jail or a ghetto or a prison camp. And they broke out of the prison in a way. But in fact, in order to understand both that reality and its future, you have to go back in time, not just to the beginning of the Israeli siege on Gaza that began in 2007. I claim that in order to have a full understanding of what we are facing now and what we are going to face in the future, you have to go to the very origin of the Zionist project. And this is something that is not easy to convey within mainstream media, not only because the mainstream media's position on Israel or Palestine, but also because of the nature of mainstream media that doesn't have the space or the span of attention to have a more elaborate discussion of current events in order to understand them better and to expose the real motives behind certain actions and prepare for what can come next. So I would suggest that in order to understand the last 2.5 years in Gaza, you have to go to the very early formative period of Zionism. And it's important to remind ourselves that Zionism was a European project before it was a Jewish one. And because it was a European project for a very long time, not only when it was conceived, but also it was a European idea to maintain it and its moment of needs. Because of that, I think we begin to understand one of the most bewildering aspects of what happened in the last 2.5 years, and this is the European political elites, at best indifference to the genocide, and at worst complicity with the genocide. After all, Israel, in their eyes, was something that especially Western Europe, helped to establish, so as organically connected to it, and therefore any confrontation with Israel is a confrontation with a West European country. And Europe is willing to confront Russia, it is willing to confront every other country in the world, but it will never apply the same kind of yardsticks for behavior or policies or criminal policies to a Western European country in this respect. Now, it began as a European project. In fact, it began as a Christian European project. Certain sections of evangelical Christianity were the first one in modern times, in the very beginning of the 19th century, to bring up the idea that there should be a European and even American support for what they called the return of the Jews to the Holy Land in order to precipitate the second coming of the Messiah, the resurrection of the resurrection of the dead, and the end of time. They were joined in the mid-19th century by a group of Jewish intellectuals, thinkers, activists, who were desperate about the inability of a large section of Europe to accept the Jews in the continent as indigenous people and saw them as aliens, as a distinct race, as a different nation even. And therefore, together with these early Christian Zionists, if you want, they began to develop a vision of a Jewish state in Palestine as a solution for the fact that they saw no hope for any fundamental change in the position of European societies and countries towards the European Jews. We have to remember that two things happened in the second half of the 19th century that contributed to the consolidation of these ideas. One was the rise of nationalism. As you know, we usually call 1848 as the time of the Spring of Nations. And these new European nations needed someone, they needed the other that is not part of the nation to define more clearly what the nation is. And the Jews were a very convenient scapegoat for defining modern nationalism, whether it was Polish, Romanian, Serbian, you name it. It was easier to know who is a real Pole, who is a real Romanian, who is a real German by saying, well, they're definitely not Jews. And the Jewish intellectuals themselves began to internalize this idea and say, well, maybe they're right. Maybe Judaism is a separate nationalism, a separate race, and we deserve a homeland of ourselves. We can't have it in Europe. And it was very clear from the support they got from certain Christian institutions that they would try and help them with the political elites to establish a European state at the heart of the Arab world with the help of Europe. Now, all these ideas were very theoretical until it also caught the attraction of British imperialists. There was a lobby within the British government in the second half of the 19th century that was unhappy with the British policy of not adding any more colonies to the empire, and particularly with the policy that said Britain should not try to take over possessions that belonged to the Ottoman Empire, which included Palestine, in order not to push for the disintegration of the Ottoman Empire that could lead to a European war, which in fact is what happened once Britain deserted this policy of keeping the Ottoman Empire together. So these imperialists began to push together with the Christian Zionists and the Jewish Zionists, the early Jewish Zionists, for a change in British policy. And the moment they succeeded in persuading the British government that it would serve the British imperial interest to tear out of the Ottoman Empire parts of the Arab world, including Palestine, and in the case of Palestine, build a Jewish European state for the Jews that Europe didn't want, these ideas that might have seemed, and they did seem to many people, including to many Jews, as immoral, impractical, became a strategy, became a real policy on the ground, despite its immorality, its in many ways impracticality, but nonetheless established new facts on the ground. And that history is important because I think to this very day, European intellectuals and academics, and this includes also Americans, because America was later involved in it also directly, did not come back to a very important moment in history. And that moment was immediately after the Holocaust in 1945, when European intellectuals and leaders had a chance of saying to European Jews, because most of the Jews who were in Palestine as settlers were Europeans. There were very few settlers who came from Arab countries or Muslim countries. Didn't say to these settlers, who were about 500,000, please come back to Europe. We are going, our answer to the Holocaust is to build a Europe that would not allow a genocide of anyone, not just Jews, because in the Second World War, not only Jews were genocided, millions of other people were genocided. We will build another Europe that would make it your home because it is your home. And forsake this colonial project that you built together with Britain, which was only, 45 years old. Not one European intellectual, not one American intellectual, not one European or American leader. But I think we should, at that moment, focus on Europe. America was not as important then to that story as yet. Not one European intellectual, no one European leader said, this is how we're going to build post-Holocaust Europe. No. They all said, what a wonderful idea. The best solution for preventing a European genocide of Jews again is to send them all to Palestine and let them colonize the Palestine and dispossess the Palestinians. This is something that is not ancient history, and this is not something that has been resolved as yet. I'm still expecting European leaders today, European governments, to say to Israeli Jews of European origin, you are welcome back home, even if you are a third generation. Of course, they don't have to go. I'm not saying that this is a solution for the Palestine question. I'm talking about a symbolic, significant closure to the terrible idea that Palestinians had to pay the price for the fact that Europe didn't know how to deal with its racism towards Jews. And because it didn't know how to deal with racism towards Jews, it's not surprising that it doesn't know how to deal today with its racism towards African, Arabs, and Muslims. So this historical context is very relevant to what goes on today. Now, of course, there is a more immediate historical context, which you cannot forget, especially when we talk about the Gaza Strip. And this has to do with the fact that this European project, built on the bayonets of the British Army, eventually was powerful enough in 1948 to deal with one of the two most important challenges that faced this idea of solving the problem of European Jews by building a European Jewish state at the heart of the Arab world. One challenge was that not all the Jews in the world agreed that this was the solution. And Israel tried to solve it by claiming to be the state of all the Jews and used a lot of energy and propaganda. And I'm not sure that in historical perspective they succeeded, but time will tell. But the second challenge was the more important one. How do you turn Palestine into a Jewish state when the majority of the people are Palestinians and they are the indigenous people? And in 48, there were the circumstances that allowed Israel to try and change dramatically the demography of Palestine by ethnically cleansing half of the indigenous population, by destroying 500, which were half of their villages, and demolishing most of their urban spaces. And in that project of ethnic cleansing, and I'm not sure how many people are aware of it, the Gaza Strip was created. There was no Gaza Strip before 1948. Gaza was organically connected to the rest of Palestine. It was a very pastoral place, both the city and Han Yunis, which was the second largest town, and then there were the other villages, very fertile, very rich agriculture and trade centers connecting Egypt with Syria and further afield Turkey, and being in family, blood, social and cultural and political connection with every other important town and center in Palestine, whether it was Jaffa, Acre, Haifa, or Jerusalem and Nablus and Halil, Hebron. Israel created the Strip because it had a problem of what to do with hundreds of thousands. In fact, 200,000, the exact number was. There were 200,000 Palestinians, which Israel found difficult to find a new place for them after kicking them out from their villages and towns. The other 550,000 Palestinians Israel had expelled in 1948 were pushed towards Syria, Lebanon, and Jordan. These 200,000 were meant to be pushed forcefully by Israel into Egypt, but Egypt did not allow them to cross the border into the Sinai. So David Ben-Gurion, the Israeli prime minister, found a solution. He said we can give up 2% of Palestine, 360,000 square kilometers, and push the refugees into that strip that we will create with the agreement of the Egyptian government, and to actually turn it into the largest ever refugee camp in the world. In Gaza were 80,000 indigenous Gazans, if you want, and they had to absorb within 3 months 200,000 people. Of course, they had no infrastructure, no way of doing it, and Gaza became one of the most dense populated enclaves in the world. So that is also part of the story, because 70% of the Palestinians in Gaza are descendants of these people who were expelled, and many of them were expelled from villages on whose land and whose ruins some of the Jewish settlements that were attacked on the 7th of October were built. And this also gives you some sort of a context that is important for understanding what happened, not necessarily justifying everything, but giving you a good idea of what was happening. And of course, even a more recent context are the years of Israeli occupation since 1967, and in particular, and I think this is something that, again, mainstream media either doesn't have the patience to mention or doesn't want to mention, is the fact that life in Gaza in particularly became unbearable already in 1994, ironically, as a result of the peace effort, as a result of the Oslo Accord. This is, by the way, also true about the West Bank. But in Gaza in particular, life after 1993 was far worse than life between 1967 and 1994. Israel encircled the Gaza Strip with a barbed wire in 1994, limited the number of Palestinians who could work in Israel, and increased the power of the settlers who were only a few thousands, allowing them to take over water sources, fertile land, and created with them wedges between Palestinian and this very, very, very dense and small piece of land, and made the ability to move around, to shop, to visit family, to find work, much more difficult than it was before 1994, which meant that unemployment was on the rise, and with it, also the determination not to give in to such a way of life, especially when that way of life was produced by a false promise of peace and a different reality, which of course Israel never meant genuinely to fulfill when it signed the papers of the Oslo Accord in 1993. And it's not surprising that for the people of Gaza, since 1994, the organizations, the outfits that they felt deserved their support were not judged by their ideology or by their ideological visions of the future. They were judged by their willingness to confront this life in the largest ever refugee camp that incrementally became one of the largest prison camps in the world. And the support went to those who opposed the Israeli occupation, and not for those who decided to find a kind of a collaboration with Israel with the hope that this would somehow serve themselves, maybe, but also their own people by securing some sort of pacification of life. I mean, the Palestinian Authority. And this is important to understand because the Israeli narrative of the 7th of October and also their justification for what they did after the 7th of October is that actually this whole operation was instigated by Iran. It's part of an Islamist attack on Jews or the state of Israel, on the West as a whole, totally ignoring, of course, on purpose, the fact, the explanation for the support for the political Islamic groups, for their ascendance, for the agenda that they had on the 7th of October, which included one of the most important issues, included the probably what most Palestinians in the occupied West Bank and the Gaza Strip would regard as the most sacred issue, the issue of the political prisoners, hoping that abduction would lead to a prisoner exchange, miscalculating the Israeli government's indifference to the fate of its own to the hostages taken by the Hamas, and also the wish to break out of the kind of prison Israel created in 2007 with the policy of blockade and siege that turned, as I said, the biggest refugee camp in the biggest maximum security prison on earth. And to this, of course, you could add the international community focusing on the Ukraine and not paying attention to what was going on in Palestine, which was not just a problem of a shifting attention, it was a problem of hypocrisy. The way that Ukrainians were praised for their actions, while similar actions by Palestinians were prescribed as terrorist and Islamist and fanatic. So all this is important. And it also tells you something about the viciousness and the callousness of the Israeli actions after the 7th of October. It is important to say that, of course, and I don't want to deny it, that this was a traumatic moment for the Israeli society. The way people were killed, the kind of people who were killed, although we don't know until today how many were killed by the Israeli army, how many were brutally killed by Palestinians, how many died as soldiers in fighting Palestinian guerrillas. All this is not very clear, but no doubt it was a traumatic moment, and there was a sense of revenge, and part of the action was response to the kind of things that happened on the ground. But it's very clear that it turned very quickly into a different kind of operation, which had behind it an ideology and a strategy. And I think it goes back to the 1948 ethnic cleansing from a different angle. If you look at the 1948 ethnic cleansing in a very cynical way, you can say it was not successful because half of the Palestinians remained in Palestine and many millions of Palestinians remained close to Palestine. And in the refugee camp, the Palestinians, contrary to what the Zionist leaders thought would happen, did not forget and did not die without passing to the next generation the desire to liberate Palestine, to fight for its liberation. So in that respect, as terrible as the ethnic cleansing of 48 was, it was also incomplete. And it was also incomplete because Israel, for its own, I don't have time to go into it, for all kinds of strategic reasons, decided not to occupy the West Bank in 48, although it had all the power to do that. So when they did complete the occupation of the whole of historical Palestine in 1967, they incorporated, again, a large number of Palestinians, almost the same number of Palestinians that they had expelled in 1948, which is another reason why a certain stream of Zionism that began to develop in Israel, which I call Neo-Zionism, the Messianic Zionism, felt that it had the power to rectify the mistakes, the so-called mistakes of the previous Zionist leadership in 1948 and in 1967. And these people who were quite on the margins of Israeli politics until the 21st century are now dominating Israel. They took over the educational system, the cultural system, the political system, the army, the police, the Secret Service. And they have a very clear idea of how to rectify which they think was a mistake in 1948, namely not to expel all the Palestinians and take over the whole of Palestine. In fact, not just the whole of Palestine, but also parts of what they think was the ancient biblical Israel, namely Jordan and some parts of South Lebanon and South Syria. These people that used to be regarded in Israel a bit as lunatics are now the powers that be in Israel. And they were already the powers that be in November 2022. And they are the ones who, without any inhibitions, turned the Israeli reaction to the 7th of October into a genocide campaign. In many ways, you can say historically that Israel is transformed from being a settler colonial state, and it's not the only settler colonial state. You are now living in a settler colonial state. Israel turned it from a settler colonial state into a genocidal state. And a genocidal state has to be confronted morally and legally and in aspect of legitimacy even in a more different way than a settler colonial state. But of course, the international community, the political elites at least, are not yet absorbing this, digesting it, or are willing to act. But I think we should be with open eyes to understand that the current political elite, and it doesn't matter what will be the results of the elections in April 26 in Israel, the current political elite in Israel is determined to continue what it started in Gaza in the last 2 years and move with it to the West Bank, then to the Palestinian community inside Israel, and expand the Israeli territorial space beyond the boundaries of historical Palestine. Now, I would like to say that, first of all, I don't think they will succeed. I'm just talking about plans. And secondly, I think that this is an indication of something that could make us optimistic about the future. This total exposure of the project that you could have conveyed or commodified, if you want, in the past as an ambiguous project of democracy and human rights and civil rights and salvaging Jews on the one hand, with unfortunately the need to colonize, occupy, and ethnically cleansing. The whole idea of the Jewish democratic state, as if it's possible to have a racist state that also adheres to principles of democracy and universal values. But somehow the West, in particular the political elites in the West, especially the left in the West, was very happy with this idea that yes, you could somehow square this circle. This is gone because the people in Israel who subscribe to these ideas are also the enemies of the new neo-Zionist messianic elite that took over Israel. They are also the enemies, not only the Palestinians. And they don't seem to fight back. They seem to emigrate instead of fighting back. Some of them are fighting back. You can see it on the streets of Tel Aviv, but I don't think they have a chance of winning. This will expose Israel as a genocidal state, which means in the short term, we are very worried of what it's going to do. And as always, the immediate victims of their fanaticism, racism, and extremism are the Palestinians themselves. However, it must, because it happened before in history, wake up many more people to understand that this is a state that should be treated as a pariah state, that this is a state that doesn't have internal dynamics of change. And that requires a different regional and international reaction. Now, I know presently we have political elites in the region and in the international community who would do nothing about this. I don't have to tell you this, but I'm an historian and I'm not impressed by stills. I'm impressed by videos. I don't think the picture we see today, populist leaders in America, populist fascist leaders in Europe, rulers rather than leaders in the Arab world, in other parts in the global south, are the future. I think what Gaza did, it took millions of people of civil society out to the streets, not just because of Gaza, but because of the essence of politics that they are facing in their, excuse me, in their own countries and facing their own ecological, social, economic injustices in their countries or in the world. And yes, there's massive solidarity with Palestine that goes beyond the issue of Palestine, as we've seen from the millions who demonstrated in Italy, for instance, has not yet been translated in any infrastructural way, organizational way, institutional way to become a counterforce to populism, fascism, racism. I will finish by saying that we are at the junction in history where if you see Gaza as the epicenter for a while, and epicenters do change. Vietnam could be an epicenter. South Africa was an epicenter. Central America was epicenter. Gaza was the epicenter in the last 2 years. And seen from that epicenter, you can see two global coalitions confronting each other. And we should hope that we are part of the coalition that I think that would win the day eventually, but not immediately, unfortunately. So one is the global Israel. Global Israel are all these members of the alliance that see even a messianic, racist, fanatic, extreme Israel as serving their interest. Maybe these are Christian Zionists who believe that this is just getting them even nearer to the return of the Messiah and the end of time. Maybe these are multinational corporations that believe that Israel's high-tech ability brings them dividends. Maybe, surely it is military industry and security industries, maybe oil industries, who think that Israel is a bonanza rather than a liability. And Jewish communities who still regard Israel as an insurance state, although this is ridiculous because the only place where Jews are being killed in high numbers is in Israel. Nonetheless, even those who are cynically support Israel, not ideologically or morally, would find out that the kind of Israel that we have now, which I call in my last book, the state of Judea, I don't think we have Israel anymore. We have the state of Judea. This state of Judea would make it difficult even to be a worthy investment for members of that coalition that now see it as bringing dividends, mostly financial, maybe strategic dividends. It is faced by global Palestine. Global Palestine is all these networking, intersectional networking between trade unions, indigenous minorities, oppressed minorities, people who fight for ecological justice and economic justice, people who understand that without a credible international legal system, you cannot create global cooperation to face global warming, poverty, immigration in any effective way. This is global Palestine, and global Palestine took out millions in an unprecedented show of support for Palestine that has never been seen since the arrival of Zionism to Palestine. The numbers were very small in demonstrations for Palestine up to Gaza. And therefore, I do think that we should believe that that global Palestine is the one that may eventually recruit also more reasonable political elites, financial elites, and economic elites, first of all, to take urgent action to defend the Palestinians from the next stages of the attempt to expunge Palestine as a country, as a people, as a culture, as a history. And secondly, would be willing to understand that the whole vocabulary that was used by genuine or cynical people who were interested in bringing peace to the Holy Land was wrong. There's no need for peace. What there is need for is decolonization. What there is need is transitional justice. And more than anything else, there's a need to listen to the Palestinians and hear them. What are their aspirations for the future of Palestine? And start with them and let them be in the driver's seat and tell us how they view the future of Palestine. And I'm sure that you all know that they wish to reconnect it to the Arab world. They want to see the refugees and their descendants coming back. They want to see equality. They want to see democracy. They want to have normal life that have been denied to them for the last century or so. I do believe that this will happen. I do believe that this, in the long term, there are already indications that the global Israel and Israel itself is not sustainable in the long run. But I am worried about the next 2 or 3 or 4 years, I do admit. I hope we can all be alert and have the best way of using any kind of politics that we have to tame it, to limit it. But we should think about the future as harboring justice and liberation and freedom for the people of Palestine. And with it, I think a lot of other struggles for injustice in the Arab world and beyond will also benefit from such a vision. Thank you.
In person someday, soon, to we want to tell you that we have a basket back there. We take cash and checks. We also can steer you to our website that has a PayPal and credit card option. We need your help to keep this thing going. We have an ornery old building in need of lots of deferred maintenance, but it's a comfortable, beautiful building, an auditorium that receives all sorts of people, has all sorts of organizing happening every day of the week almost, it seems. Lots of different groups are here to try to make a better world for all of us. As I was receiving more people into the auditorium and getting rid of things on the coat rack, I came across something that I bought for 50 cents at a thrift shop a long time ago. I just needed to share this with Ilan and with you all. This says, the streets of Israel, Festival of Democracy. The state of Israel will ensure complete equality of social and political rights to all. Declaration of Establishment of the State of Israel, 1948. And then it has a picture of people with signs that say freedom of thought, freedom of religion, freedom of property, right to property, freedom to assemble, freedom of speech, freedom of expression.
Okay.
50 cents. It's a great relic to have here at the church, as we have lots of other ones as well. Welcome back, our wonderful musicians, and thanks again for joining us this morning with one last song.
Yes,
Thanks.
Yes. So as we're contemplating the wise and powerful words of Ilan Pappe, we will play a medley of 3 songs from Palestine. We will not sing them, but if you know the songs, feel free to sing with us or hum the tunes. These are very well-known songs.
You want to come up?
حكم النادل فيه منا بالكية ضربة الخناجر ولا حكمنا بالكية
everybody. That was Ghassan Sawalhi on Raq, Lizzie Cook on cello, and my name is Hussam Bahlol on oud. Thank you so much for having us. Thank you.
Thank you, all three of you, for joining us today. It's just been really, really wonderful.
Thank you.
Wonderful embellishment of the words of Professor Pappe, who has very little time left with us. We promised that he'd be on his way by 12:45, which gives us about 20 minutes for a possible Q&A. I wanted to ask you, Professor Pappe, about Britain and the whole thing going on with Palestine Action and just the brutal way that they've prohibited speech around Palestine and arrested a bunch of people who are on hunger strike, and some of them in very delicate health because of that. I wonder if you could tell us any more about that. It sounds like England is getting just as brutal in its treatment of Palestinian resistance as the United States with university students.
Yeah, definitely. I think that, like in some other Western European countries, the demonstrations for Palestine gave a pretext for some sections of the government, especially in the security services, a pretext to curb freedom of speech. We've seen it after 9/11, a similar kind of attitude. It's kind of gives them an excuse to say that there's too much freedom of expression, exploiting Islamophobia, the pressure of the pro-Zionist lobby in Britain to show action. I do think that they got themselves into trouble with the Palestine Action by so quickly proscribing it as a terrorist organization. I don't think they expected that the society would react in such a way. I mean, most of the people they arrest for raising signs of support of Palestine Action are between 70 and 90 years old. And each one of them requires 25 policemen to escort them to the car, and from the car to the police station. I think I have a feeling that the Supreme Court, the High Court in England, would eventually interfere, but it will take some time. But nonetheless, that doesn't change the fact that this is still a cowardly behavior, and it doesn't matter whether you have a conservative government or a Labour government that still believes that supporting or at least being indifferent towards what Israel is doing serves its interest. There's also fear of the United States here as well. It goes back to what I said before. I don't think these are local battles between people who fight for freedoms and people who want to curb them. I think it's very global, and each of these governments that uses demonstrations for Palestine as a pretext to curb freedom of expression is doing it for the same reason that other governments are doing it. And we should look for an international alliance that should face it, because in some countries the local alliances are not strong enough to face that kind of dictatorship and lack of respect for our basic civil and human rights.
Yes. Question right here.
Hi, I'm curious why, it seemed to me you went very fast from the rise of what you're calling New Zionism in Israel to a kind of assumption that that's going to prevail from now on. And I wondered why you why you didn't seem to consider the idea of a moderate Israeli pushback and retreat from the current genocidal policies.
Yeah, thank you. Because I'm spending much of my time also in Israel, and I can see it with my own eyes. So it's not just an analysis from afar. This is knowing the beast from within. And I do see that the younger generation, and that is what is important, the younger generation has graduated from educational system that can only lead it to support the neo-Zionists. There are very few young people on the other side. Yes, you still have people in the 50s, 60s, and 70s who want to preserve the old Israel. But they usually have dual nationalities. They have jobs that they can reignite elsewhere. That's why we estimate that 500,000 of them already left. So instead of fighting, they are leaving. So that's one of the reasons I don't think that there will be a counter Israel. No, and more importantly, their leaders have nothing to offer as an alternative. And that is what is worrying. If they had a bold position that says, let's rethink about this whole relationship between us and the Palestinians, between the river and the sea, they might have had created a counter Israel. But they still want to square the circle. They want to be what Albert Memmi used to call the leftist colonizers. They want to be colonizers, but nice colonizers. They want to be ethnic cleansers, but to be progressive ethnic cleansers. This is not working. It didn't work, and that's why most Israelis said, well, that's much better to decide whether we want to be a racist state or democracy. We prefer to be a racist state. So these people don't have roots in large sections of the society. Demographically, they are not growing. They are important for the economy, for the academy. But you can read Haaretz today. The academy is being totally drained because people don't want to stay. I don't see any potential force that will fight back in an effective way, nor does it have a vision that could really prove to people that they have something else to offer. None of these people who are now supposedly being the alternative condemned the genocide. They don't call it the genocide. None of them has done anything to protect the Palestinians in the West Bank from the terrible ethnic cleansing operation that Israel is committed. And all of them are complaining that the world is against them. This is not an alternative. So I'm afraid we've reached that position where there is no dynamics of change from within. The only way of growing a proper alternative Jewish voice inside Israel is only once, I think, decolonization would start it. It's not a precondition for decolonization. I say it with I'm very sad to say it. I'm an Israeli Jew. I don't want it to be like this, but that's the only way I can see it working. I do hope that international pressure and regional pressure would be enough, and there was no need for violence to do that. That depends on the region and the international community. There's a way of changing it, but the way does not go through creating an alternative inside Israel, but first of all, punishing Israel for what it's doing, and then maybe you can begin to see something different developing. But that's the historical moment we are in it, and we have to recognize it.
Peter, welcome.
Thank you. Ilan, can you comment on your book, Israel on the Brink? And
I can't hear you. I'm
resolutions
sorry.
you talk about in that
I can't hear you.
necessary for change.
I can't hear you. I'm sorry. I cannot hear you. Trying to hear you.
Can you hear me?
Very weak. I'll try to do my best. That's the.
Yeah.
I have the
Can you
volume on
comment
full
your
volume
book,
here,
Israel
and
on
I
the
can
Brink,
hardly hear you.
and some of the many revolutions that you talk about that are necessary for real change.
Oh. Yeah. You want me to mention these revolutions? Can you now? I can hear you. Can you repeat the question, please?
Can you comment on your book, Israel on the Brink, and some of the many revolutions that are
Yeah,
necessary
thank you.
for change?
I understood you now. Thank you. Yes, definitely. I point out to discrete mini revolutions that each one of them by themselves would not change the reality on the ground, but together, when they will fuse together, they will have a transformative effect. That's my judgment as a historian from the way a regime changed or states disintegrated in the past. One of them is the implosion inside the Israeli Jewish society, and we already talked about it. The takeover by the Judea state, is a state of Judea of Israel. This is going to weaken considerably Israel. The other one is the vision of having this kind of Israel means that Israel would have to have an economy of war for another 10, 20 years. Economy of war that stretches over decades is not sustainable in terms of the state's ability to take care about the needs of its own society. Much depends on the American taxpayers now for that kind of militarization in front of a future that is only full of conflict and bloodshed. But one wonders if the American taxpayers would continue to pay the huge sums of money, and they would have to be much higher than they have been until today to sustain the state of Judea and its ambition. So I think that even Republicans in America might have second thoughts about whether Israel is a liability or an asset. The other one has to do with the fact that the younger Jewish generation, including the United States, disassociate themselves from Zionism. And then you have the international community, not only the societies. I do believe that there will be a transformation that will begin to affect political elites. As Noam Chomsky puts it, the movement between B and D, the boycott and divestment, to the S, to the sanctions. I also think there are undercurrents in the Arab world that would create a very different political reality and can create different reality in the Arab world that would face Israel not with small guerrilla armies, but a far more formidable challenge that I think, together with the other pressures, might have an impact on its policies and identity of the regime. And finally, I would just mention quickly, one is, I do think that the younger Palestinian generation is far more united, less fragmented from the present compared to the present political polity of Palestine. And I do believe that they have a potential of putting a very different vision for Palestine that the world will not be able to ignore. So all of these and others, which I mentioned in my book, as I say, not by themselves, but I do believe that together they are mini revolutions, I call them. Some of them do not depend on us. Some of them we have a very important role in making them come true.
Ilan, question for you. Are you able to travel to Israel, Palestine?
Yes, so far I am. I'm not able to teach. I'm not able to enter schools. But yes, I'm still able. I don't know how long they're going to do this. With this particular government, there's no telling. So yes, the answer is yes. And this is particularly important for me because of what I call the forgotten Palestinians, the 2 million Palestinian citizens of Israel. We haven't talked about them, but they are also under a policy which is callous, inhuman, and it's a different kind of oppression, but a very terrible one. And I'm very happy if I can still be with my friends and colleagues and comrades there to do all we can also to help and defend this particular community of Palestinians, as I say, 2 million Palestinians that usually are not talked about, understandably maybe because what goes on in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, but they're very important, and they will be very important for the future.
Questions? I think that we are ready to say thank you to Ilan Pappe for joining us this morning. We hope that you will come see us in person sometime soon. It would be really wonderful to receive you and celebrate your work on behalf of the Palestinian people. I want to thank everybody who's here. If you haven't signed up on our mailing list, there's a couple of clipboards back there. We'd be glad to be in touch with you about upcoming events, and there's a whole lot of really wonderful things coming up this late winter and spring. Please check out our newsletter that came out. Thank you, Crystal Rollins-Jackson, for your work in getting those newsletters out every 2 months. And thank you again to Hussam, Lizzie, and Hassan for joining us this morning. Yeah. Thank you, Ilan.
Thank you.
Let us
Goodbye.
stay tuned. We are planning some emergency events with several Latin American members of the church on the subject of Venezuela and U.S. gunboat diplomacy and imperialism in Venezuela. Stay tuned. Wednesdays at Burlington Mall, at the headquarters of ICE, there is a standout, rain or shine, and some 500-600 people arrive there. If you want a ride, maybe I can help you get there. I try to get there every time I am able. Tuesdays, there's also a standout at the new Israeli embassy at noon. Is that right, John? Yes. At noon every Tuesday. And join either one of those and stay tuned for other actions and demonstrations regarding Venezuela.
Where is that?
The new embassy's address, 1 Washington Place. John can steer you to exactly where it is.
It's right next to, there's a Staples store there. And there's a big walkway that goes to Government Center. It goes to Boston City
It's right
Hall.
near Government Center then. Yeah.
So it's in that
City Hall, right in that region. Tuesdays at noon.
You see us, you see us, and somebody will always have
We are so hungry for lunch. Luis Guzman, our cook, has prepared us a delicious luncheon. Ilan, Pappe, thank you